Ah yes, drifting. The crazy way of driving that has become the center of now a worldwide car cult. Whether you're shredding it in a clapped out Nissan or a brand new M3, there's just something fun and rewarding that comes from going around a corner the way you really shouldn't. Sideways. Drifting has become one of the most popular forms of racing here in the car community, with all corners of the earth now having their own drift scene and now evolving into a major league motorsport with things like Formula Drift and even the FIA having their world championship. But its journey to getting to this point has been a long and dangerous one, and there is one man we can owe this to. This is the story of how one man made drifting into an international phenomenon, the guiding hand in some of the most famous movies and anime us car guys know and love, and the reason that a rusty Corolla from the 80s is now worth more than a brand new Civic. This is Premium Heritage, I'm Jackson Lambros, and this is the story of Keiichi Tsuchiya, the king of drift. Oversteer. A characteristic in which a car loses traction in its rear wheels and therefore goes into a big ol' lazy slide. In the early years of motorsports, we didn't have aerodynamics to keep us glued to the ground, and tires made way less grip than they do now. So oversteer was a normality, and you could see F1 cars sliding in around corners. Most drivers of the era just balanced the slide and then pulled out of it. After all, staying in a slide too long and you could end up going into a good old spinata. But one man didn't just enjoy sliding, but would intentionally chuck his car into corners. Enter Kunimitsu Takahashi, a retired motorcycle racer from Japan who made the jump from racing on 2 wheels to 4. Takahashi would intentionally drift, seeing it as a way to maintain speed throughout corners. And even though this way of driving was uncanny, it would lead him into victory lane quite a few times in the Japanese Touring Car Championship. To this day, Takahashi is considered as the father of drift. But our story isn't about Takahashi, but rather his biggest fan, a kid by the name of Keiichi Tsuchiya. Inspired by Takahashi's unorthodox driving style, the 21-year-old debuted racing in the Fuji Freshman Series in 1977. Tsuchiya was unlike the normal racing crowd at the time and didn't really have the motorsport background or the cash, so instead of using track days for practice, he would use the local streets. Driving at the limit through the winding roads of Usui Pass, he would earn the respect and attention of other street racers, and the urban legend of Keiichi Tsuchiya would begin. Throughout the early 80s, Tsuchiya-san would not only drift on track, but use it to his advantage. Unlike any other driver on the track, this guy would carry his momentum through the corners and overtake cars on the outside like he was driving a USAC sprint car. This guy even drifted all of 100R at Fuji Speedway in the wet. This massive left-hander that kind of looks like a semicircle. Drew or Blake, whoever's editing, pull it up. Thank you. These moves would ultimately and unsurprisingly end up with Tsuchiya-san losing his freshman series license, and it was these moves that gave him the iconic nickname of the Drift King. His unique driving style not only amazed fans at the track, but inspired them to give it a try themselves. Quoting the Drift King himself, not because it's the quickest way around a corner, but the most exciting way. Soon enough, the Hashiyata could be seen taking to the same mountain roads Tsuchiya-san had ripped through before. Behind the wheel of anything that was cheap and real-world drive, young adults all around Japan would try and give drifting a shot themselves. And this new method of driving caught on fast. By the late 1980s, the mountains of Japan would echo with the sounds of engines and tires throughout the night. Local tuner magazine Carboy would become filled with send-in photos of Toyota 86s racing and drifting all around the country. Touge Culture was born, a community based on driving and street racing at night on all of Japan's mountain passes, preferably with cars going sideways. It's almost like freestyle skate, the way these guys would look for the perfect drift spot and try the perfect run. To help popularity boom even more, a handful of local tuning companies and car magazines came together to make a series of short films on what the Touge life is all about. And the star of the show? Nobody but the Drift King himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you some of the most raw and pure driving ever to be caught on tape. Keiichi Tsuchiya in Plupsy. Hit it! And this goes on for 20 more minutes and for 2 more movies. Copies of these films were distributed out through garages and editions of Carboy, and eventually reached all around the country, with hundreds of thousands of people watching the Drift King tear it up in his iconic Toyota AE86. And then the Rosas showed up. Since this promoted some very illegal actions, tapes of the films were pulled from the shelves alongside Tsuchiya's racing license again. But the good news is you can still find all the Plupsy films right here on YouTube, and of course, Tsuchiya would keep on driving. Tsuchiya had already made a massive impact once again, amazing viewers with his car control, and turned drifting into a national icon. Now all that was left was for the art of drift and its king to hit the international stage. And he did just that after returning to racing in 1991, driving in the Japanese Touring Car Championship. Throughout the 90s, Tsuchiya-san would be all around motorsports, no longer as a menace, but as a cult hero. The king of drift would prove himself to be pretty dang skilled at driving grip, driving in Super GT, Formula 3, and even a few NASCAR races. However, the top shelf trophies for the Drift King were his class wins at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, driving in 1995 and 99. The Drift King had gone from street racing misfit to Japanese hero, but his work was far from over. In fact, his work off track may have given him some deja vu. In 1998, the same year that Rush Hour came out, Tsuchiya would become one of the lead consultants for a little car anime called Initial D. It was his job to make sure the driving and culture of the series was portrayed correctly throughout the first season. And it's actually believed that writer and illustrator Shuichi Shigeno, I'm probably butchering that, but whatever, modeled the series protagonist Takumi after the Drift King himself. But the big guy himself actually makes a cameo in the season finale. Tsuchiya would also go on to play a major role in one of the most famous movies for car guys, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Not only did this guy coordinate the stunts, but drove a really good amount of them too. And look, there he is again. Racing Stanley, everybody. Outside of movies, you could also catch him in Japan doing stuff for Best Motoring, doing lap battles at Tsukuba Circuit, or Touge battles at the Gunma Sports Cycle Center. We gotta do a video on all of these like drifting spots in Japan, or like at least the legal ones.
Oh yeah.
So where is the Drift King today? Believe it or not, he's working for Honda, working for their in-house tuner Modulo. Again, I'm probably butchering that. You can go into a dealership in Japan and buy yourself a car directly graced by the hands of the Drift King himself. On top of this, he was one of the lead developers on Toyota's new GT86 and was credited for making it rear-wheel drive, have a limited slip differential, and to be actually somewhat affordable. A true successor to the Hachiroku. And it's things like this that make me love this guy so much. Tsuchiya-san not only started drifting, but saw his passion through and helped it grow into an international icon. Like skateboarding, drifting has gone from being done on late night streets, dodging the law, to an international sport with world-renowned faces. Not only did Tsuchiya make drift big, but turned it into an aspect of car culture as a whole, all while doing his best to keep driving fun and accessible. And it is that makes Keiichi Tsuchiya such a car cult hero and a man truly deserving of the crown as the king of drift. For anyone curious, he drove an NSX in 1995 and the Toyota GT1 in 99. It'd be really cool to actually see more drift guys come back with Gazoo now. Like Gazoo, throw Dayoshi Hara in a Le Mans car. I want to see it. Thank you guys so much for watching our stuff. We've been putting a ton of effort into it. I was having issues getting up here, so Ryan had to drive 90 minutes down to school to pick me up. But it was a ton of fun. We hope you guys love watching it as much as we do making it. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and join me next time when I try drifting while door dashing tofu to Ryan's house.